Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by Fred and Lou Hartwig and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly, and our topics this week: Kansas City Catholics get a new bishop, some Kansas City workers get a big disappointment, and when will a former mayor get City Hall recognition? Plus roast and toast. But we start with our interview segment and welcome the first ever executive director of the Kansas City Streetcar Authority, Tom Gerrand. Previously, Mr. Gerrand served as co-director of transportation at MARC, the Mid-America Regional Council. The 2-mile streetcar system is set to start running early next year, maybe by March, from River Market to Union Station, and is seen by some as a major economic development tool for Kansas City. So let's learn more about streetcars and welcome Tom Gerrand. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
What do you think the general reaction is going to be? What do you think is going to happen when the streetcars start running? What do you think is going to happen? Are people going to love them? Are the critics going to be satisfied?
Well, I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. We have been waiting decades, some would say, to bring rail transit back to Kansas City and to see those cars rolling in downtown after a lot of work, a lot of effort by folks in downtown and the construction workers. I think people will be happy to transition from the construction to the operations, and the cars rolling down the street will be a significant visual cue of that.
What's the probable start date? We had heard March when we talked with Troy Schulte, city manager, on this program. Is that still the target?
We are. Well, we're targeting early 2016. I think it's too early to pinpoint a specific start date at this juncture. We need all of our cars in town first. We need to complete our federally required safety testing, which is very important that we do right. And so I think we're interested in making sure that we do it right instead of necessarily doing it fast. That said, we're motivated to get it done as quickly as possible.
Well, when do you think the streetcars, and there are what, 4 of them?
That's correct.
When will they actually be on Kansas City soil?
Sure. Our first car is set to arrive in late October, October 29th. And as early as the first week in November, we're going to be pulling that vehicle unpowered down the streets of Main Street to check clearances and to start the testing process. And it will be testing on the streets in downtown through the month of November and then thereafter.
How do you see your role as executive director? How wide a role is that? Is it all encompassing?
Sure. Well, our primary focus at the Kansas City Streetcar Authority is really on the operations and maintenance of the system, also of the branding, the marketing, the coordination with the downtown property owners and the ratepayers into the district. And so our focus is really partnering with the city on the construction and then carrying forward the project after construction is completed.
To whom do you report?
I report to the Kansas City Streetcar Authority, which is a board that has been formally created to oversee the operations and maintenance of the system.
And what is the price tag for the system? What has it been determined to be?
The cost for the construction is $102 million, and I'm happy to report that we're still on budget. There is contingency that remains, and we're obviously nearing completion of construction, which is really set to be done in substantial form by the end of October.
What do you anticipate the cost is going to be annually to run the streetcar system?
So the annual operations of the system, we are going to be hiring a contract operator to operate the system, and we're in final negotiations of that specific contract, but the cost is estimated to be about $3.5 million a year for that operation.
And the money for that is coming from the development district?
It's coming from the Transportation Development District, which was previously passed and approved. And it really is a unique model that collects a combination of sales and property taxes as well as fees on surface parking lots to fund the bond proceeds on the capital side, but then also the operations and maintenance of the system. I think the downtown ratepayers, as well as the city, understand that the construction's important, but it's even more important that we have a sustainable financial model that can support our operations into the long term.
And the rides are going to be free?
The rides will be free, that's correct. And that was a decision by the downtown property owners and ratepayers to really maximize the value of this as a circulator for downtown businesses and residents.
How many stops from one end to the other?
We have 16 stops in total along the alignment.
And will there be security on the streetcars?
We will be partnering with Kansas City Police Department to bring extra enforcement beyond the traditional downtown patrols to provide a presence and level of security on the vehicles and along the system.
Is there somebody who drives it, a conductor of sorts?
There is a streetcar operator, yes, much like you would see in the on a local bus.
And how's the system powered?
The system is powered by overhead electrical lines and substations that are located throughout the route that power those lines.
And what do you estimate the time will be from, let's say, River Market to Union Station?
It's estimated to be about 13 minutes.
All right. I look forward to riding the system. Hope it's up soon. Thank you very much for coming by.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. That's the Executive Director of the Kansas City Streetcar Authority, Tom Guerin. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Terry Riley is a former councilman and now president of Transformation Consultants. Gwen Grant is president and CEO of the Urban League in Kansas City. Mary O'Halloran is a media and communications consultant, and attorney Steve Marakian is with the firm of Wersch, Hobbs and Marakian. Quick note about last Thursday's program: it wasn't on. Or more correctly, it wasn't on for many Time Warner customers, myself included. A transmission problem at the cable company kept the program from airing. Last week's ruckus did air as usual on Sunday morning. If you want to catch up on what we did last week, you can find the broadcast at kcpt.org. Look for the ruckus listing under programs. Now on to this week. The Pope is coming to America and a new bishop is coming to Kansas City. Pope Francis is on his first ever journey to this country, and American Catholics are excited. There may not yet be excitement, but certainly a high level of interest in the appointment by the Pope of a new bishop for the Kansas City St. Joseph Diocese. He's James V. Johnston, a one-time engineer who switched professions at age 26. Since early 2008, Johnston has served as bishop in Springfield and Cape Girardeau. He takes residence in Kansas City this November. Obviously, the papal visit and a new bishop for Kansas City create enormous interest for local Catholics. Mary, what's the early reaction to news of Bishop Johnston?
Well, I think that every Catholic who cares about governance of the diocese certainly would welcome this strange episode of Bishop Finn, strange and disturbing and upsetting years of his governance to be over with and a new person to town. Of course, you know, there are many people in Kansas City who would like to see a more open and honest and thoroughly law-abiding governance for the church in Kansas City. And I think the way he will be received when he is, I think installed is the word, in November, will depend upon whether or not he looks back at what's happened and honestly tells the people of Kansas City, the Catholics and the whole community, what happened, why it was illegal, why he's going to be different, and what infrastructure he's going to set up to make sure that there's a dialogue, like the Pope has recommended this morning, between the people and the people who govern the Catholic Church. And that would be a good start.
The Kansas City Star, Steve, said this new bishop needs to heal the congregation, heal the Catholics of Kansas City. What do you think that involves?
Well, in fairness, I should first say, and this has nothing to do with your question, but in full disclosure, my firm represented Bishop Finn, right. So I want that out there clearly. It's nothing to do with your question. I think healing involves some of what Mary was saying. I would like them to look forward more than backwards, but I do think it's important that the Catholics and the entire community recognize that the direction the Pope has set for the Catholic Church is not just in Rome, it's universal. And every bishop in every diocese, every priest, every congregation has the monumentally important function of protecting the children. And until the community feels that the church has gotten beyond the prior problems and is going to take steps to make sure these things, to the extent they can possibly prevent them, are never going to happen again, there's not going to be this kind of healing. So I think it's very important that the new bishop come in and make a statement about what's going on.
Could we say the new bishop is here to deal with unfinished business?
Well, that's very good.
I would certainly not have said that.
I knew you wouldn't. Neither would most people.
Let's turn to unfinished business. That's very important, and it relates to what you just said. is that he promised that he will obey the court orders that are still in effect from all the families that won judgments against various priests and others in the diocese for assaulting children. They're important, and Bishop Finn refused to honor them.
Let me move on here to the Pope, who was in America creating a lot of publicity and attention. What's the impact of the Pope coming to America, Gwen?
Well, it certainly is a very exciting experience for everyone. I mean, what's not to love about Pope Francis coming to America? I mean, it's something that has just stimulated everyone's interest. He's probably one of the most likable popes we've seen in many years, and I think it goes a long way in delivering a message to Congress, that, as he did this morning, which was a very soft but strong, kind of a message about governing and about concern for the people. His message about love and respect of all people, I think, was really important, and it's just been a delightful visit.
Well, Terry, he's very popular, but he really hasn't changed church doctrine, as I understand it. Nothing substantial has changed. So is this a victory of style over substance?
No, I believe he is working on changing the church.
He changes the tone, we're told.
He's changing the tone, coupled with he's changing the message. It's a more inclusive message based upon what I heard today. He's a pope that's talking about bringing people together. In the past, I believe the Pope just looked at things as a dictator, in my opinion, dictating to the church.
Only because
this is the direction. But it's an inclusive message, and based upon the people he mentioned. He mentioned Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. He talked about King. He talked about Dorothy Day and Thomas Merton. But that's a message of inclusion and bringing everyone
We
together.
got to get out of this.
All
But before we go, not everybody loves the Pope. There are critics. Columnist George Will wrote a controversial piece, Steve, who said, in part, he embraces ideas impeccably fashionable, demonstrably false, and deeply reactionary. He was talking about the Pope's comments previously regarding climate change and capitalism.
He ought to be ashamed of himself. That's outrageous.
Yeah, quick reaction.
And I don't think that is outrageous. And I think the Pope is a wonderful man, and he's a great theologian, and he should stick to theology, and he should try to spread this message of love
and the Pope is a trained scientist, by the way.
What science was he trained in?
Through the doctrine of the Catholic Church. But when you do not speak out and criticize Marxist dictators who have slaughtered millions of Catholics, you're not spreading the message of love.
And he didn't meet with dissidents in Cuba, and he didn't speak out, apparently, about the form of government dictatorship in Cuba. Okay, we got to go.
That's unfair. That is really unfair.
Well, he didn't speak out about it in Cuba,
What has he spoken out about?
Well, no. We don't have time for a long discussion, but he didn't speak to dissidents in Cuba. Did he?
So you're going to criticize
No, I'm just saying it as a matter of, I just simply said
he put together the Cuban coalition that brought us together again.
Of his visit to Cuba, that he didn't meet with the dissidents.
He did speak this morning to the wholesale violence that is
Well, that's not in Cuba,
but
and he's talking to the Congress, not the Cuban people.
But he's speaking every day.
Okay, all right.
The Cubans are here.
While all Kansas City area business owners...
Healing and love.
Let's roll that back. So, folks, we got to stop here so I can read this and people can understand what we're going to talk about next. Thank you. While all Kansas City area business owners don't think alike, it is probably safe to assume that most favor right-to-work laws, which diminish union influence, and oppose minimum wage increases mandated by government. When the Missouri legislature's veto session ended late last week, business interest won one and lost one. The legislature failed to override the governor's veto of right-to-work legislation, but successfully overrode Jay Nixon's veto of a measure giving local governments the authority to set a minimum wage. So what is next, if anything, for those in Kansas City who strongly support the idea of raising the minimum wage? Let's start with former Councilman Terry Riley.
There's some options out there. One is you can do a petition, a statewide petition for a minimum wage. And as it relates to right to work, let me go ahead and go into that also. If women in minorities were getting paid the amount of money they were supposed to get paid, and women not getting 23 cents less than men on the job, we wouldn't even be talking about this issue of right to work. Unions, they have some work to do, but we cannot continue not to give a living wage to people so that they can raise their families. It's just flat out wrong.
Now, if I could change the topic back to the topic, is that a good idea to try to get a statewide petition drive, as happened, I think, in 2006 when the minimum wage in Missouri was voted up as to the level it is now?
Yeah, you know, I think it's probably an idea worth considering, but it's also a mammoth undertaking. I think to zero in on what is happening locally with this case is to understand that, yes, Judge Del Muro ruled in favor of the city. However, there is an opportunity to appeal. I happened to attend the hearing and believe that the hearing that was held on Tuesday, I believe that the representatives of the people, the petitioners, will probably put forward an appeal on this case to be able to have their
case was whether this $15 issue could get on the ballot, but the state legislature has said you can't raise the minimum wage in the city.
That's true. But the reason they went forward and wanted to have this case heard and to be able to get it to the ballot was so that they could then move forward with a challenge to state law in terms of local control. And that's what's really important about this. That by the judge's decision robbed the petitioners of their right to challenge the thing. And she made her choice based primarily, I believe, based on some of the questions she raised, on the fact that if it gets on the ballot and the city, you know, is prohibited by state, it doesn't make any difference. Versus, and she said, well, what if it loses? Well, if it loses, the electorate has decided that they don't want it, so there's no need to go forward.
But if they decide they do, it still doesn't apply.
No, it doesn't apply. But if they decide they do,
so just an election for the sake of having an election.
If they decide they do, it sets the stage for challenging.
Test public opinion.
To test, to test the law.
With the legislature's failure to override the governor's veto of right to work, should backers of right-to-work legislation just give up in Missouri, Steve?
No, they shouldn't. I don't know whether they will ever succeed. I think, quite frankly, that it's the fact that they couldn't override the veto is not the question in terms of those who support right to work. And Terry, there are a lot of people who agree with Terry's view that right to work laws are not good laws. I understand all that, and there's legitimate debate.
But you like right to work, don't you?
I generally favor right to work laws, though I do understand the arguments against them. But the answer to your question is whether they should give up, and the answer is no, because if, for example, if you have majority in the legislature, which they clearly had, that supports it, indicating that there's support in their constituencies. And if the next governor that comes in is not Jay Nixon, then the right to work legislation...
And it won't be because he can't run again.
I mean, someone like Jay Nixon, then right to work legislation could certainly pass. So this notion that because you lose, because you've passed something and a governor has vetoed it, therefore you never try to bring it up again, makes no sense to me.
Okay, we've got to wrap this up. 50 years ago, union membership in America was what percent of the workforce?
Very low. Very high, rather.
Much higher than that.
About 33%. Today, it's between 7 and 11, right. And most of the union participation is in government, not in the private sector. Kansas City has a propensity for naming things after former mayors. Let's see, Bartle Hall, Wheeler Downtown Airport, Berkeley Park, Emanuel Cleaver II Boulevard, Funkhauser Freeway. I just made that one up. Now there's a continuing effort to find something to honor Kay Barnes, the city's first woman mayor, and the mayor who began the push for downtown redevelopment and growth. Barnes held the mayor's job from 1999 to 2007, and still 8 years later, no street or bridge or building with Kay Barnes' name on it. Columnist Yael Abahaka has taken up the fight and suggests, as a minimum, renaming Grand Boulevard to Barnes Boulevard from the Missouri River to near 28th. Is this a grand idea, Gwen?
Well, it's certainly a grand idea to honor Kay Barnes for her stellar leadership as mayor as the first female mayor of Kansas City. I mean, she was visionary in her desire to transform downtown, certainly, which was evidenced with the Sprint Center, the Power and Light District, revitalization of the River Market area. I mean, just one thing after another. So Kay was probably, you know, from my perspective, a very courageous, successful mayor. She took many positions that, such as getting involved in public education when there was lots of polarization and fighting going on between folks wanting to pursue state takeover of the school district and those who were opposed. So she's done a lot for Kansas City and should have some honor, some tribute to her contribution. And I like the idea of Grand, but I would say Grand Boulevard, all of it, and you know, Kay Barnes, and you know, or some whatever it is, I think should be centered in downtown, because that is in fact her legacy.
And Terry, you were on the city council at least part of the time with Kay Barnes as mayor. What was your relationship with her, and what was her working relationship with the council?
I had a fond relationship with Kay when I was on the city council. In fact, I was there all but 1 year because I finished an unexpired term. The Sprint Center, which was probably $275 million, coupled with the entertainment district, during Kay's tenure, over $3 billion invested in downtown. If there is any mayor, you know, in which I love the other mayors as well, but I would love to recognize Kay for her leadership. And in fact, there's a committee that has been put together here recently to look at what can be you know, what can be named after Kay Barnes, because she displayed a lot of courage, as was mentioned earlier, and a lot of leadership. And I had a great time working with her.
And Mayor James is, I believe, the man who appointed the committee and is himself committed to doing something in honor of Kay Barnes. But it's been a year or more, according to Yale. Steve, why can't this get done?
It's been rekindled.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that Kay Barnes should be honored. I don't like the idea of renaming Grand Avenue. It messes up my MapQuest, my Google Map. I can't. I have enough trouble that way.
New stationary.
I would say come up with, like, say Barnes Plaza instead of Barney Alice. Who is Barney Alice?
He was a guy who was a hotel operator.
I don't care.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Something like that. I don't want to change Grand Avenue.
I have something to say.
But I do want to honor her.
I think that there are. I mean, my gosh, her legacy. I mean, asking about a legacy. It's there and it's just booming. I mean, it's from the river to the Crown Center to the plaza, and 20,000. I was in the room when she gave one of her State of the City addresses, hoping that maybe someday there could be 10 or 15,000 people that moving into downtown. We're way past that.
We're
now.
at about 21,000.
It's amazing, and you know, she inaugurated a style of leadership that was really needed.
There was certain dignity in her style, I thought.
Dignity in her style, bringing everybody to the table. It was a horizontal rather than authoritarian style. And I got an idea. Idea for the committee. I'm really excited about this idea of putting a lid on top of 670 and creating an urban park that goes across the top of the freeway and connects the Crossroads area, the Kauffman Center Performing Arts area, the new hotel, with downtown, and naming that Kay Barnes Plaza. I really do think that sort of wonderful connecting link between the two would really say something about her legacy.
So you want to put a lid on this discussion?
I want to put a lid on it.
By the way, Kay Barnes was one of the first 2 women elected to the Jackson County Legislature. She also served on the City Council. She ran unsuccessfully for Congress. Her cousin was beloved journalist Walter Cronkite, and maybe most important of all, like your host, she was born in St. Joseph, Missouri.
Okay. It's all connected.
Talent.
Yes.
It is time now for Roast and Toast, where the Rockettes fling grenades or accolades at people and events in the news. And let's start with Terry.
Oh, well, I am toasting Rush Limbaugh today. He is just the worst. All the things he has said.
You're roasting him.
Yeah, I'm roasting him. Excuse me. I am roasting this guy. I mean, in a deep fryer today. I want to fry this guy. I mean, the Pope has been, you know, one of the most pleasant things that I believe that has happened in many, many years, of how he's connected with America and around the world, and just dealing with humanity itself. And he has been the subject of many, many attacks of Rush Limbaugh. And if you consider yourself some type of Christian, and you attack this man, I truly believe you have a problem, and he deserves to be roasted today.
Well, Mary's some kind of Christian. She's a good Catholic. You're up next.
Well, how interesting that you should comment on that, Mike. In the battle in Kansas with Governor Brownback over the funding of our public schools, one name emerges really brightly, Dr. Cynthia Lane, and I want to toast her today. The superintendent of the Kansas City, Kansas School District has consistently and bravely spoken out and told her parents the truth about Governor Brownback's attempt to cut a budget seriously in an attempt to amass enough money to balance the budget because of his tax cuts for the upper crust. Dr. Cynthia Lane will be honored Sunday by the Kansas Families for Education and later by the Mainstream Coalition. She is courageous and brave and outspoken and deserves every accolade she gets. Congratulations.
I'm roasting Ben Carson for his comment, and I quote, "I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation. Shameful. Our Constitution protects our religious freedom and does not prohibit any U.S. citizen from pursuing public office on the basis of his or her faith. It was a bigoted remark that flies in the face of the founding values and principles of this great nation where religious freedom is paramount. Carson's comment, his belief that Islam is evil or somehow unconstitutional, is proof positive that he is not the person we should put in charge of this great nation."
Well, my soul must be in jeopardy because I'm going to roast Pope Francis, who is not only the vicar of Christ, but also apparently an economist and climatologist. While the pontiff is pontificating about how the U.S., unlike China and India, is destroying the world's climate and the evils of capitalism, you'd think that His Holiness would have a few words of criticism for the Marxist dictators in Cuba who have killed or imprisoned 1 million Catholics. Instead of worrying about glaciers, how about calling for Congress to stop funding the systematic murder and dismemberment of babies for their body parts? Jesus said, "Suffer unto me the little children." He wasn't talking about bringing him their body parts.
And finally, as a change of pace, here is a toast to late-night host Stephen Colbert, who, when introducing presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, noted Sanders' age, 74. Colbert said that makes Sanders 5 years older than Donald Trump and 50 years older than any woman Trump would ever marry. And that's Ruckus for this week. We sadly note the passing of Fred Hartwig, a longtime supporter of KCPT and the Ruckus program. Sincere condolences to his family and friends. Thank you for watching, and good night.